understand people. That's what I would like for you guys to understand. When we're working and helping people and living and loving, we are understanding people. And I think this is where this confrontation comes in. And again, we talk about a lot about who we are and what we can do. So I want to talk about attitude. You know, when someone says you have an attitude, or I don't like your attitude, or I don't appreciate, all those things sound so confrontational. But here's what I like to break up with attitude. If a person has an attitude, they are probably awkward. Something about them, they feel awkward. For whatever situation it is, they feel awkward, or the situation is awkward, and that's because of the unknown. They're unknown about the outcome. So if someone's in a situation or having a conversation and it comes across as slighted or anything, it's probably a feeling that they have and about unknown of the outcome. And the people really live on outcomes, which is why it's so difficult for us to understand each other, because either I'm looking for an outcome, they're looking for an outcome, we are not aligning our process to have an outcome. It's usually a direction or being directed at. And if someone's talking to you, sometimes they're talking at you, or not talking with you. There's a difference. To talk with someone, it's different than talking at someone. Having a conversation is different than getting information. You can get information by having someone talk at you, but it's not really mutual, right? So the other one, T. And I think this is a big one. People talk through trauma. People talk through their trauma. People have experiences, and trauma means it's an experience. And they're talking through their experience. What they have encountered, what someone had told them to encounter, what they believe, all that perception. We have talked about trauma before. So they're talking through trauma. The other one is tired. You could be tired for all kinds of reasons. You could be tired physically, emotionally, mentally. And if you're tired, you're going to see things, hear things, all through that filter. You know, some people are just tired of how they're living and they want more. They're tired of how they're living and they don't know how to get more. They're tired, so they're coming through that filter. So that gives them, again, that angry attitude, okay? Because you can have a good attitude and all this changes. But I think we're talking about an unpleasant attitude. I'm not going to say bad or horrible or terrible. We're talking about an unpleasant attitude. Because you can have it. Beautiful, blissful attitude, peaceful, joyful attitude, and it's wonderful, and we don't really have to talk about that. But when we're working with people, are we understanding who is talking to us? Are they awkward? Are they speaking through their trauma? Are they tired of who they are, where they are, right? Insecure. When people are insecure, again, it comes out in awkwardness. It comes out in being tired. People are insecure, so they're questioning not so much you, but they're questioning their insecurity. So it comes out with anxiousness. It comes out with, sometimes it comes out in anger, right? If you're insecure, you're trying to defend yourself, and insecurity only comes with defending. You have to defend yourself. You have to defend who you are and what you are as a person and as a human being. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I am this tall, whatever insecurity you have, whether it be a religious base, whether it be color based, whatever it is, environmental based, you're insecure about where you are and how you're living. It can be insecure about money, right? If you're insecure about whatever you're dealing with, you're going to give yourself a bad attitude. And I think I'm going to have to put bad, because we know that people who have good attitudes are never insecure, right? Understanding. Now, I'm going to make sure, understanding, it's either lack of, right? Lack of or miss. So it's either lack of understanding or misunderstanding. And that because we don't get enough clarity of what we're trying to say. We don't get enough clarity of how we're trying to say things, or we're not asking enough questions. I think the only way to get a better understanding is to ask the question. Because if you don't ask the question, a lot of times you are going to end up defending yourself, which causes insecurity, and it's probably because you're awkward, right? So if you have misunderstanding, lack of understanding, and no understanding of how you're receiving it, remember, it goes back to yourself. It has a lot to do with self, right? This whole thing has everything to do with how you're receiving this. Remember, you're a receiver. You're a receiver, and then you give. And if you're receiving through disrupted filters, right, you're going to create a bad attitude. The next one, depression. Last one, emotions. Remember, if you're depressed, that means something is being pushed down. Something is being held down. Depress. To depress, right? If you're depressed, you're holding something down. If you're holding anything down in your life, there's going to be a conversation you would like to have with someone, or you're going to be in a conversation, or you're going to be in a contact with someone that's going to create a bad attitude because you're holding something down. And again, that causes a lot of mixed emotions and not understanding your emotions. That's what attitude is. That's what a bad attitude is. So write this down, go over it, and ask yourself, when you're talking to someone, what do I understand about this person? Am I feeling awkward? Am I talking through my trauma? Am I listening through my trauma, which is all your experiences, right? Am I tired? Am I tired of who I am, where I would like to be, where I think I should be, where I think I'm older than this, I should be this, you have all these ideal expectations, right? Am I insecure? A lot of people don't want to face the fact that insecurity is a very tough thing to look at themselves and says, I'm not sure. I'm just not comfortable. I'm not good at this, right? And insecurity, right? You're going to end up defending yourself. And if you're going to defend yourself, then there is no conversation. It's just defending, okay? And if you have understanding, lack of understanding, or a misunderstanding, then you're also going to feel you're going to create a bad attitude. All right? We're going to go over this a little bit more, a little bit later. Over what we call transformative action. Right? That word is being used an awful lot in the self-help books or anything you're reading is transformative, to transform, to change, right? To change. Here's my issue with that. And I think we can all change as we grow, as we evolve, right? Because we have evolution. Now, what's part of evolution, right? What's part of evolution is our environment, right? Also, what's part of evolution is not just what's in the environment, it's actually what's in our genetic structure that's part of the environment. So we call genetic being. Evolution's part of that. It's part of how we grow, where we grow, the way we grow, and all those things. But when we talk about transformative action, and then we put that into what you call a noun, that has something to introduce to you as a self, right? If you're going to add a noun in transformative action, you have to now put yourself as the circle. So I'll put that circle in here and put you right there, right in the middle. This is why even in martial sciences, we use the circle a lot, because of the angles, the 360, everything that's involved in here, the depths of a circle, the evolution of a circle, all those things have movement inside. Everything has movement. Universe uses a circle, right? We all use a circle. We all use the Fibonacci sequence of how it does a circle. We all have developed understanding of the circle, and most people have never dived into what a circle actually means in their lives. Sometimes you keep circling around in the same area and behave in the same pattern because you don't know the way out, right? Sometimes it's not a way out, it's the way in, right? In to self. With that being said, when we talk about transformative action, most people think of themselves as a sickness. I think this is where it gets a little bit thrown off, and I think it's unfair. You're not sick. Just because you do unhealthy things, it's not a sickness, or if you're into religious sects, or sin, right? And then now we use transformative, the way we call transformative learning. It's a theory out there of how you transform and live. Is basically, to look behind all the understandings you once had before. Well, that when you transform into a now, into self, and then even in the Buddhist practice, we call it metta, right? Is when we generate all good feelings for all of life beings. It is pushed out like the sun. When you are going into yourself, to develop self, you must look at self and how you would develop, right? So to look at here, we have to look at how was I developed? How was I developed? Who developed me? Where did I develop from? What factors are in my development? And did I, if you look at yourself, what choice did I make? If you did not make your choice, and you start saying, this is just how we do things, this is how we grew up, this is what my environment says, this is what I was taught, this has nothing to do with yourself. If it has nothing to do with yourself, then you are not developing yourself. And that's the confusion. So where do you get transformative action? if you have never looked within yourself. You can have all the theories you want in the world. You can have all the practice you want in the world. You can have all the deep practices you want in the world. But to look at your oneself is the start of being transformed. Then you could go into transformative action. It's almost would be impossible to know what direction you're heading in if you don't know what you're driving. If you don't even know what vehicle you're in. If you do not know anything about the vehicle you're in, when it breaks down, you're going to go off of what someone else tells you. Oh, your carburetor is this, or your fuel injection, whatever that, not a car guy. Whatever those things are, you're going to be like, okay, that's why my car is broken, so what do I need to fix it? Well, in transformative action for most people, they're like, well, put this in, right? How many times have we been to a car dealership or a car shop, and they say it's a sensor. And they change the sensor, they charge you this money, and they put in, they're like, oh, the light's still on. Well, it's another sensor. Well, they don't know. Because they don't know the wiring of what caused the internal action to have causations of factors. Well, that has a lot to do with yourself, too. We have sensors. Most people know about. What we're going to continue to talk about is how we are and how we can move forward. But I want to take you on a little trip here, and I want to talk about nature. Nature gives us so many lessons. Gives us so many lessons. And with those lessons, we tend to forget about the balance, because nature is balance. And we as humans, we're out of balance. And there are many factors of why we're out of balance. We talked about emotional issues, we talked about genetic issues, we talked about environmental issues, we talked about just a human aspect of different factors, right? But we never look at nature and its balance. The reason why we don't look at nature is because we're blinded by our own mental cage. It's hard to see that. You know, some people ask me, says, hey, Dr. Paul, so why are you so aware? Well, you can become aware because you live in a certain environment. You always have to feel like you're protecting yourself. Well, that's part of that part of the brain, the amygdala and the hippocampus, that really lets us know that there's something dangerous, and it releases into the adrenaline gland so we can learn how to protect ourselves. But nature, like if you look at lightning, per se, we don't really understand lightning and thunder. But lightning is finding the least resistance to a connection to another cloud, and the atmosphere is in its way. It heats up to such a high degree that as it moves to its next destination, it expands the air and it heats it up, and that's the crack sound. Now, I want you to think about that. It is looking for the most least resistance to its connection. Resistance to connection, right? Resistance to connection. We as humans don't understand the least resistance. We think we are pushing through. We use those words, pushing through, going over, getting through. All those are struggle words. In nature, the least resistance. And in that least resistance to a connection, it is looking for a connection to ground itself. That crack expands with heat and air. That's the thunder. If we think about that, we could do that also. And we have a conscious state to do that. And that's where that awareness comes in. Nature gives us that understanding of balance. We don't understand balance because we're not looking for the least resistance. I'm not talking taking the easy way out. There's a difference between least resistance and taking the easy way out. Most people understand that you take the easy way. It's not, least resistance does not mean easy way out. And that's that understanding that we use those words that it gets kind of confusing in our actions. But it's not confusing to our brain chemistry. Knowing what nature does, see nature. I start to see nature not because I just became aware of where I was, who I was, and all this other stuff. It's because I slowed down to watch how the path of nature is. That's why I love the woods and nature so much, because it's always teaching me. There's always teachable moments. So we're going to continue to talk about nature, balance, and the resistance to connection. Because it goes back to those factors, right? It goes back to those factors of what's creating the resistance to connection. And with the connection, it's not just to things, it's to self. It's not just connection to things, but connection to self. Again, those factors, those human factors, environment, emotions, right? Things we're taught. I've always talked about those E's, right? Those E's are education, things we are taught, energy, emotion, environment, right? What's the next 5 one? We have education, energy, emotion, environment. What's the other one? Remember, there's always 5. If you are having a hard time figuring it out, it's because of the resistance. Sometimes answers are just not going to be given to you. It has to be explained to you. Even after explanation, you have to understand. And that's where asking the question is. Learn how to ask the question. So, education, things you're taught, energy, the things that are around us, emotion, right? Comes with feelings and thoughts and things like that. Environment, right? In this segment, for those of you who are watching online, for those of you who are in this classroom, we're going to talk about really it's life and death, right? Life. It's existence. What is existence? We're working with people. These are the 2 factors that we're concerned with. Those are the 2 things that we don't often talk about, but that is our concern. If you have any questions, you can put it in the chat, and then someone will let me know what the questions are and things like that. But for those of you here, when we're talking about life and death, what is life? You know, we have our birth, and then we have the grave. You can kind of think that is death. Is there something beyond death? Is there something before birth? We do know through science that there's stuff before birth. There's stuff before birth. There's genetic codes. There's ancestral memory. There's genetic memory that's passed on down through generations and ancestors. We have done the study of it. But we're not asking ourselves, is that a factor? We're not understanding that those are factors in life. It's not just birth and then your journey and then death. What's in this journey? How do we move forward and through this journey when we have known factors before you even take your breath? What's some of the known factors, right? We have environment. We have the environment is all the things that surround you, from the corner store to family members, to the cats and dogs, to the visual burned up, torn down buildings. They're all factors. They all have a presence in your mind. And if they have a presence in your mind, then they're producing brain chemistry. So those factors still apply into the mind and for the brain chemistry. And we haven't gotten to how we journey through it, how we struggle through it, how we overcome things, and all those great things and what people have always talked about. Because it's still life and death. The beginning, where does the beginning end? Throughout history, it has. Way before your great-great-grandparents were born, there's factors. So where's the beginning, right? So we can always talk about some of the things we might know about death, but let's focus on the life and how we incorporate those factors, because those are important. When we talk about emotional intelligence, what we're really talking about is the whole thing of the world, right? Well, what I mean is that if you look at this, and this could be a skull, this could be a universe, but it really starts right here, right? What we talk about and don't understand is how everything circles in a form that is known throughout the universe. If you look at this, it looks like a wave. Look at this, it could be a frequency. But what it really is, it can also separate between hemispheres, right? You also have the brainstem, which goes all the way down to the bottom. And you also have this as the top of our head, it is like a receiver. With that being said, if you have receivers coming down and in your ears from listening, things are being projected in. Now down here, if we have feet, we also have things coming up from the earth. All this travels up the spine, up into our brain, right? So when the brain is sectioned off, it just, as we look at it, we have the frontal, we have the oldest part of the brain, we have the amygdala, right? With that, and then we have both hemispheres. Some people know as left and right hemispheres, but they're not understanding the context of how things are being received. And we're not even talking about through experiences. As a filter. That filter can disrupt, cloud anything you ever receive. So if you're receiving things from your ear, and then we also have the visual. Our visual cortex takes up a large part of the human reception, right? And then the visual cortex actually starts and it hits in here into the hippocampus. So we have our eyes, some little eyebrows, right? We have our eyes that goes into the hippocampus. That hippocampus now develops in our motor skills. Our motor skills and the breath and the brainstem, it also has breath. And we haven't gotten to the heart, where the heart's situated right here, which has its own vibration and frequency that emanates, right? It has its own signal. Just with understanding this, if you look at the complexity of all things being received from the feet, receiving from the ears, and then we have our eyes, and we haven't gotten to the external hands. So things we touch, right? That's why when we stretch out, we hug, and we bring things in, what are we bringing in? We're bringing in another sensory action that takes place that all functions through the body. This is not simple, but yet we get filtered and clouded from things that are happening to us, right? Things that has happened, because experiences is past. There's nothing future about the experience. Nothing future about the experience. So how do we navigate all this into the reception, perception, when we start to develop emotional intelligence? This can hurt us in